So with that, the moderator we've got is Miss Ayla Majid, and she's got an exceptional career. She's a board member and chief of strategy for Infoelectric at Brilliance Group, and she's a renowned name in the financial advisory, corporate governance, and sustainable energy domains. She represents Pakistan at various international forums, taking part in shaping discourses of evolving themes of sustainable development, energy transition, future of work, future of infrastructure, and mobilizing investments in clean energy and sustainability led projects. So thank you for being here. Then we've got, starting from the end, we've got Mr. Gerard Newman. He's the CEO of Oxfam Global. As a former senior partner at PwC UK, Gerard sat on the finance and technology leadership teams at PwC, ran the Oracle practice for PwC in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. He's worked on many large IT developments and transformation assignments worldwide, including Pakistan, where Oxfam Global recently opened an office that's currently engaged in 2 large IT-related assignments, one in the public sector, one in the private sector. Thank you for joining us. We've got Mr. Ali Fareed, who's the chairman of K-Trade KSB Securities. He was previously a partner and head of fintech at Autonomous Alliance Bernstein. He has over 17 years of experience in technology and financial services, and is the group CFO of SafeCharge, a fintech company listed on London Stock Exchange. Mr. Fareed is a consultant for Asian Development Bank and a patron of business, Pakistan Foundation. He's an alumnus of LAMS and Oxford, where he's a Rhodes Scholar. And he's one of the companies that was listed in the, one of the new startups that's received a lot of funding. So congratulations for that. And we've got Mr. Harish Chaudhry. He's the CEO of Universal Service Fund, a program run by the Ministry of IT and Telecom. As CEO of USF, he's extremely passionate about empowering societies and the role of USF in bringing the digital divide between the urban and rural communities of Pakistan. Bridging them, sorry. Having over 18 years of global experience, Mr. Chaudhry is an experienced telecom and finance veteran with vast experience in finance, regulatory, public policy, risk management, P&L, multi-channel product distribution, and marketing domains. So thank you for taking our time.
I just want to comment on the conversation that was taking place in the last panel, and the panelists, of course, showed their concern that we are preaching to the converted. I think I am actually getting more converted because there are some initiatives that have been highlighted, and I think a lot of people in this room can put their heads together and create that ecosystem, whether it is pushing back going back home and pushing our government to sort of work on digitizing the trade documentation, etc., bringing in sort of people together so that some concrete steps can take place, so that we have the right ecosystem to sort of scale all that we are trying to do, whether it is in the space of technology and IT, any of the business domains, and also sort of creating more economic opportunity, and in the process, of course, adding to the development of a country like Pakistan, and of course contributing to all the sort of stakeholders that we work with. So this panel essentially is about talking about what are the business opportunities. So since when we sort of started earlier a few hours ago, we've listened to what is the regulatory ecosystem, what governments are doing on both sides, what are the kind of frameworks, and how companies can sort of leverage, investors and entrepreneurs can leverage based on whatever is available. And here we will listen to some of the stories that already exist as to what best has come out of that. And I think, Gerard, I would like to sort of start with you, since you work closely on projects in Pakistan. From this side, coming from UK, what kind of sort of seriousness that you see from the stakeholders in Pakistan, and what interesting things that you are working on, and how it's going to unleash various opportunities in the coming near future?
Sure. So thank you very much for that, and thank you very much to everybody who's staying for the final session. You asked 3 questions there, so as I'm now over 60, I'm not sure I can remember
I
all
was
of
just
them, but I will do my best. Just to continue the metaphor about preaching to the converted, I'm conscious that we're talking about this in the embassy of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and it's predominantly of course, a Christian metaphor, but to extend the metaphor, the purpose of preaching to the converted is so the converted can then go and evangelise to those who are not converted. So it's an appropriate metaphor, but it needs extending. So in terms of my experience in Pakistan, and I guess I am a convert. I've been doing business in Pakistan when I was a partner in PwC, and also more recently for actually nearly 25 years now. I think that my observation is there has been a shift, it started off well. It went through a bad period. Which started now probably about 15 years ago, and has been improving over the last 5 years. I'll just briefly mention a couple of projects that we're involved with, and I don't want to go into detail of that because that probably won't be particularly interesting to people, but to draw the lessons from that in the context of what we've been discussing today. So the 2 projects that we're currently engaged with is one actually working at my alma mater, PwC, in writing the IT export strategy and roadmap, which is the execution of that strategy for the nation, for Pakistan Software Export Board. The second is rather different and is a project to bring digital education to the 70 million children school age in Pakistan, only 1 million of whom have any access to digital education. So just thinking about those 2 projects and what we've been discussing this afternoon. The first is, the comment was made by a colleague on the panel before about we just need to get on with it. One of the things that has changed much for the better over the last few years is the government of Pakistan has done a great job in putting in place the conditions necessary for development of business generally and IT in particular. So we've been discussing about the regulatory improvements, things about exchange control and so on, and regulation. I think, though, the challenge is that we, of course, need those conditions, but now is the time, there is a window of opportunity for execution, because Pakistan is not the only jurisdiction that is looking to take advantage of the significant growth in the global IT market. So there's a window of opportunity to take advantage of that. The second is the global IT market, as we all know, is huge. So it's currently, depending on how you look at these things, estimated to be about $8 trillion a year, and over the next 5 years will grow by 50% and will be about $12 trillion if you measure it on the same basis. So there's more than enough for everybody. But I think my personal view is I think there's a danger in trying to be all things to all men or all women. So I think the key will be to focus on the things that Pakistan is going to be famous for, not try and do everything. And aligned to that is the third point, which is about differentiation. That's what Pakistan is famous for. There is a temptation, because we as human beings like the familiar, is to look at other jurisdictions and say, we can do that too, and just try a bit harder. So an obvious one, for example, might be to look at the way that India has developed its BPO market, and say, we can do that in Pakistan as well. Now, that may be a component of the strategy, but I think it's worth taking a step back and thinking about how we can differentiate the IT industry and IT enabled services industry within Pakistan. The final thing I wanted to say is that in relation to the digital education project, so this is about bringing the maths, science and English and technology curriculum to students in Pakistan. Is that the other window of opportunity, it seems to me at the moment, is that the fact that we can use technology, and e-learning is one of the fastest growing areas of technology, to make a huge step change in the access to and the quality of education for the next generation within Pakistan. So that will reinforce the strategy and the development of IT within Pakistan. So there's just a wonderful opportunity at the moment to develop that, and I would really, of course I would say that, wouldn't I, because I'm involved in the project, but there's a wonderful opportunity for Pakistan to really grab the nettle on this one and move that forward. So thanks, I probably spent too long talking.
Gerald, couldn't agree more with you, and particularly on the point with regards to digital literacy and also sort of creating an ecosystem for STEM education. And I think, and linking that to say the kind of positive social development impact that it can have, I think it's a perfect segue to Harris, to some of the work that USF is doing. So I would like you to sort of share a bit about USF, how it's creating the ecosystem, and the positive impact that it's having on by creating the IT-enabled infrastructure in the rural areas, and the impact that it has.
Thank you, Alec. It's an absolute honor and privilege to be a part of this panel, and I would like to thank Pakistan High Commission, Bilal and his team, and HTD for hosting this very informative forum. Universal Service Fund is a fund created by Ministry of IT and Telecom, Government of Pakistan, to bridge the digital divide in the rural and remote areas of Pakistan. In the last 2.5 years, the Government of Pakistan has pumped in over approximately $350 million to provide connectivity, which I mean is 4G and laying optic fiber in the rural and remote areas of Pakistan. Providing this kind of funding and building that digital ecosystem and infrastructure in the rural areas is definitely has played and is also playing a very important role when you talk about the freelancing numbers going up in Pakistan, investment in startups coming up, and a lot of things which are happening in the rural areas in terms of when we say that when someone mentioned about e-education and e-health, because the pandemic has really exposed all of us and pushed us to do much more, because whenever anything happens from schools and colleges, people living in the rural community has rushed towards the urban communities, and there's a lot of pressure that's being built on the urban hospitals and colleges, and the quality of service and everything deteriorates. By providing this digital infrastructure in the rural and remote areas, it has eased down a bit of pressure from the urban communities, and it has paved the way for much more that can be done through e-education and e-health. That's why you see a lot of investments in the last year which has come, especially in the health and education sector. So when we talk about digital infrastructure, I call it a digital highway. So that's very imperative and very important that if we have the infrastructure in place, we can see a lot of investments coming into that area. And obviously because that reduces it improves the efficiency, it reduces a lot of hurdles, it improves the transparency, it helps in doing it in a much more productive way. So as far as the Universal Service Fund is concerned, we do intend to do $150 million to $200 million every year to put into the rural areas, and not just only on the mobile front, but also looking at the fiber, which is key for or enabler for the high-speed internet connectivity. Currently, Pakistan has approximately, I would say, the footprint of 6,000 union councils, out of which 75% union councils do not have fiber. And that's what the government of Pakistan vision and plan in the next 3-4 years to cover those union councils which do not have fiber. Once the fiber is going to be laid, that's going to be the digital highway where all the infrastructure is going to be placed, and all the e-suite that is required to build on that infrastructure will be available. And I would also add that it can never be an exciting time what it is in Pakistan right now when it comes to ICT investment. Look at the regulatory policies have been made friendly. Look at the infrastructure investment which has been made by the government of Pakistan. They do intend to make in future as well. The highest number of revenue has been recorded by the telco sector this year, and it's going to grow, I would say on a daily basis. So return on investment is going to be huge. So the government is, fully committed towards building whatever they can in terms of infrastructure. So whoever wants to come in and put in their money, I think it will be great uptake for their revenues.
Great. So, Harris, you sort of painted the landscape as to what's happening on the enabling, say, the rural part of the country as well. Not purely rural, but it's sort of the second tier or the third tier cities, and of course, looking at that connectivity is to the last mile. And Gerald, you earlier mentioned that how serious from the IT policy perspective the stakeholders are, and what kind of serious effort that is being put there. And that creates a perfect opportunity for an entrepreneur like Ali to just go ahead and invest. So what's your take? How do you see Pakistan?
I'll mention 3 things. The first thing is that there's a lot of investment coming to Pakistan. Now, you heard about the number of $370, $380 million which has come in the VC space. We are one of those companies which have raised money. We'll be soon enough, which was $5 million. One of our investors is in the audience, Faisal from Zain Capital, one of the most active VC funds. And we'll soon be announcing even a bigger series. But we are just one of the many companies who have raised money. The more important thing is the kind of investors who are in. These are tier 1 VC funds, the Kleiner Perkins, Sequoias of the world who are now Tiger Global, who are looking at Pakistan. And they are scrambling for deals. You have companies who have 0 revenues, 0 products, and they have raised money at valuations of more than $100 million. So it is happening, and it's happening very quickly. So I do expect that number of 300, 400 million to cross $1 billion very soon. But more, a lot of you would already know that. I told you I'll tell you things which perhaps you might not know. You might not know that every day on Pakistan Stock Exchange, $100 million of investments happen every day. That's a daily traded volume on that market. 10% of that is from global investors. So people like BlackRock, Fidelity, Aberdeen, Vanguard, all global institutional investors, they invest every day at least $10 million of buying and selling, which happens every day on the stock exchange. There are 6 technology companies listed on Pakistan Stock Exchange. Their share price is up 5x, 500% over the last 2 years. The best amongst them is up 10x, Systems. The stock was at 80 rupees 2 years ago, now it's at 800. The last tech IPO which happened, which was of a company called Octopus, it was an AI company. It was 40 times oversubscribed. And next week, we are helping a German IT company list on Pakistan Stock Exchange. They're raising $6 million, and the demand is far greater than the $6 million which they want to raise. So all of this is already happening. I did hear some people were saying, oh, why aren't we changing? Change is happening and happening very fast. I know there's a lot of skepticism. When I was CFO of a $1 billion market cap company listed on London Stock Exchange, a global business. I left that job to set up K-Trade, KSB in Pakistan. And most people said to me, why are you doing this? Are you crazy? Who invests in stocks in Pakistan? There is no market there. I did it. We have done fairly well. When now those people hear about our valuations, they say, oh, can we join you? But we are not the we are not an exception. We are in fact, we are a small, humble company amongst a list of companies who have done far better than us. So this company, Quiz, which is this German company we are listing on Pakistan Stock Exchange next week. When I first told them about, you should list on Pakistan Stock Exchange, they said, why should we do it over there? We are in Germany. We live in Berlin. We should list on Frankfurt, or we should list on NASDAQ. We are a tech company. Everybody told them not to do it. Now they are doing it, and they are very happy. So if you Google them, Quiz, you should check out about them. So that was the first point. 2 more points, and I'll be very quick. So sorry for taking this time. Pakistanis are doing great. So somebody mentioned about UK-Singapore trade deal. They said, that should be the model for Pakistan. Who's the trade envoy of UK to Singapore? Lord Apprise, who's also the second youngest person to be invited to the House of Lords, the Pakistani. The largest institutional investor in the world, who manages $8 trillion. $8 trillion is Fidelity. The global head of macro investment of that, Dr. Salman Ahmad, is also a Pakistani, a fellow LUMS alumni. There are 300 people from LUMS living in the UK. I'm the president of the LUMS Association, LUMS Alumni Association, and most of them are doing great. The largest UK asset manager, Aberdeen Standard, they manage $800 billion. It's a listed company. They manage the largest global emerging markets fund. Its investment director is a Pakistani, who also happens to be my wife. So Pakistani, so they, just have to get out of that, in the right place. The last point I'll make is the government is also doing well. So you just heard from Ashish Saab in terms of the investment. This is a big amount, the amount he's talking about, and the broadband penetration. But I'll also give one example, which is of SPZA. I met Amir Hashmi 20 years ago when he was he used to run a think tank called GTTN at NUST, and I was a young guy, and he was running this think tank, and he was talking about making technology parks, and he was talking about making these technology zones. This was 20 years ago, and I thought, this guy is sitting in a university, and I thought, frankly, he's wasting my time. Why is he talking about things that won't happen? But how impressive is it that instead of giving up 20 years ago, and he continued with his passion and his dream, and today he's like a minister, and he's getting all of this done, and is supported by the government. So there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of good things which are happening, and people are already doing it. There are some people who are talking, there are some people who are saying, it doesn't happen, it hasn't happened, but they are not important people. There are people who are doing it, and those people are actually benefiting. So.
Great to hear about your achievement, and of course of all the people that you've mentioned, and particularly when you mention about the Pakistan capital markets, it is still one of the lowest PE valuations. So for investors out there, anyone who sort of understands markets, it's really out there for grabs. It's sort of out there. So there was actually a point that was raised earlier, and I think I would sort of like to bring into this conversation as well. David had mentioned about that how a bridge can be made between, say, the academia or in UK and perhaps from the best of universities in the world, and also sort of create a linkage in Pakistan. And of course there are, the question was more in context, was sort of creating an environment where it's very easy travel arrangement, etc., visas, etc., all of that. But leveraging all the technology ecosystem, and from the policy perspective, Gerald, I would like to hear from you, and Haris, I would like to hear from you on that with regards to how important that is for the socio-economic development. So what is that we can do? So that's a question that I have too, and I would like to sort of hear from the panelists here. And since this gathering is about creating solutions and then implementing those, because we will seriously have follow-ups later on, because that is what is important. So
yeah, if I start, and I will be brief. So I'm not sure about how to do it, But what I would want to emphasise is the critical importance of academia and universities in bringing innovation and developing technology. So if you look around the world to the countries which have developed an innovative IT sector, I would be pretty confident saying all of them have been on the back of a close cooperation between universities which create the innovation and the ideas which can then be developed. So Pakistan has a good further education and higher education sector. So getting that cross-fertilisation is absolutely critical, in my view, to developing the sector. I'd also emphasise what David was saying before in the interaction that I've had with the people in technology and in academia in Pakistan is they are of a very high order. So yes, of course, interaction and sharing of ideas is important to innovation, but there is a very good, if you like, base capability in IT, in academia, in Pakistan already.
Excellent. So, Iris, your thoughts, how we can leverage that?
First I'll talk about the socio-economic impact which you just mentioned. I can talk about the rural areas of Pakistan where the connectivity is playing a very important role in building up that. I'll give you a couple of examples. There's one place in a very far from Quetta, which is called Mastung, and when there was no connectivity, there was hardly any electricity. So when we went there and we gave subsidy to the telco and provide connectivity there, so we figured out that there was a girl who used to draw sketches very nicely, and she used to sell it to someone and somewhere else, and then to Quetta, and what she drawing, she was getting like 1,000 rupees or something, and the middleman used to sell for 5,000. When internet connectivity was provided to her, she started making a page on Facebook and Instagram and started selling it by herself. And now she is making a very reasonable amount of money by sketches, and I've also started teaching through this to the communities which are nearby. And there's also another very heartening example from Chitra where the local embroidery is very popular and everything. So people again used to make a lot of good things, and Facebook team was visiting Pakistan and I was having interaction with them, how can we collaborate? They said that we've got a program called She Means Business. And if we can sign up with you and we can do a bit of a trainers program and training in the rural areas. So I had an example of that girl from Mastung, so I thought maybe we can just have some synergies together and maybe can get in touch with people over there. From there and also in India Singh, people have started using connectivity for their livelihood. That's how the economic impact has been. So before that, obviously the burden was on the main one person, the household who was a farmer or something. So it has created an amazing impact. Likewise, socially, because of the teaching and health and other things, a lot of things have done by the community in a structured manner that impact has helped them, not to that household, but the whole community. So obviously, the connectivity, especially in the rural areas, is playing a very important role in the socio-economic insight.
So, of course, diversity and inclusion is extremely important, and the tech sector and the ecosystem enablement has sort of really contributed. And a lot of people may not realize that how important that is for a developing country like Pakistan. When you are you sort of providing the ecosystem, providing the tools and the mechanism for women and young girls to sort of be part of say the economic cycle, and in the process, of course, grow themselves as well. So I think everybody has a role to play here. Of course, now we have a lot of sort of technology-based education platforms as well. EdTech is another area where there's a lot of investment going in to all over the world. India has a lot of investment coming in EdTech as well. We in Pakistan also has that sort of sector really unleashed in the last at least 12 months? Ali, you may have some view on that, so I just wanted to sort of know that. Is that a sector that you look at, and how do you see that scaling?
So we launched something called KSP Varsity, which was an online MOOC with courses on finance and technology. And without any marketing, within 24 hours, we got more than 3,000 students who enrolled on it. And it's for free, so it was not a commercial, but that shows the demand. I'll just make like one point. I think what Harisa is doing, and sorry I mispronounced your name previously, is the most important thing in Pakistan. All we need from the government is two things. Internet connectivity through fiber, so that it's fast, and tax, so that it's easy to do business, which they are already doing. We don't need
Low tax.
low tax. No tax. The government has raised all the tax. So less bureaucracy and fast internet is all the private sector needs and all investor needs, and I'm sure like Faisal can talk more about that. Demand and businesses and investment will happen automatically as long as we get these things. So his role is the most important role in the ecosystem. So I hope you
put him on the spot.
Yes, it's a big responsibility.
No, it is. And to be honest, I'll just add what you're saying. This fund which has been created was not being fully utilized. I can just give you numbers for an example that from 2006 to 19, the fund was utilized for approximately less than $300 million. In the last two and a half years, we've committed over $300 million. So the government is fully committed, and we really want, because right now we know that there's a need of the arm. As you mentioned, the fiber, yes, that's the digital highway what we're looking at. And until we do not have that kind of a digital highway, yes, EdTech and ES and everything might not be very successful. Unfortunately, we do have a low penetration in the fiber, but hopefully we'll try to catch up. In the next 3 to 4 years, the whole dynamics, and I would say the whole ecosystem which is revolving around the connectivity is going to be much better, much faster, and much reliable.
And that's great, because we don't, as entrepreneurs, we don't need anything from the government. We don't need to be here and facilitated. But thank you for facilitating us. Because we don't have time, we are building the business, but we only need good internet and easy routes, so everything will happen on its own.
And a country like Pakistan, which has its own challenges, I think we have a challenge with regards to at times less energy, at times surplus energy, at times not being able to sort of pay to these companies, etc. I feel that technology sector also has a huge role to play there, because when we sort of look at from an integrated lens, we can really find out solutions for a lot of sort of, say, larger problems as well. So here we're talking about all the great things, but let's be realistic. And I want to ask each one of you that in your roles, that what is the biggest challenge that you see, and obviously Chirag from the perspective of your work in Pakistan, and Haris yours, and I think Ali, where you see that may be the biggest challenge or the number one challenge that you see, so that, because I want us to sort of leave this room thinking how we can address that, and not just sort of be happy that we are doing awesome things and everything is great and the government has put out this ecosystem, the policies are there, our friends from STZ are doing great stuff, but let's have
it's
look
easy.
at the difficult things.
It's easy. One word: financing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think finance, because my background is finance, I also sort of raise capital, so I think improving the risk profile of Pakistan, I think that is so important.
We've spoken about the issue about security. So financing is one of the finance industry, one of the most risk averse, understandably, one of the most risk averse industries, and there's a big lag between the perception and reality. My view is it's a generational thing, actually. and that it does take decades to before it fundamentally changes. There's things you can do to improve it, but it is a big problem.
Yes, Mr. Shahid, that I think you need to go tell the finance stakeholders your story and improve the risk profile of the country. Anyway, moving on to Haris.
I think the biggest challenge is the perception which we have not been able to build by Pakistan. So I guess Pakistan's perception needs to be highlighted at forums like these and a lot of others, because a lot of things are happening. There's some stats being shared by Ali. I think this needs to go out to the public and especially to the UK diaspora here and there. So we can, I think the perception needs to be, I feel the challenge is the perception.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think these things are changing. So because I told you, I do talk to some of the largest, if not the largest funds, and we are just about to close our Series A, which is a big amount of money. So I can tell you that the generational issue has been resolved because of internet. Because the younger guys who are now the fund managers and who have sitting on top of money, they go on the internet and get information.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. So there's a lot of excitement, and I think we need to sort of share that with the rest of the world. I know the government is, yes, excited at this point in time because these are changing times. We've not seen these interesting and exciting things happening before. It's just that although I know in the COVID times and we're almost out of that, it is not used good to use the word positivity, but I'll still say that this contagious positivity needs to carry on. So thank you so much.
Questions and general comment. So I'll give you from my personal experience. I work with a consultancy in the UK, very large. We are the biggest public Deloitte. We are bigger than Accenture in public sector. And we have loads of people working for us from Belarus. And because of the Russian invasion last week, we lost them. Belarus has not been it's not a democratic country. It had a bad risk profile. But one thing they had a very good tech sector. And we went and found them because there's a gap in demand and supply. Yeah. So having that risk, yes, and traditionally you can say, I don't see that as a challenge for Pakistan. It's that core competence which you can build if you can deliver. Angola was during civil war, companies were investing and getting oil from Angola. Their oil industry didn't stop for a single day in their 20-year civil war. So yes, risk is there, but you look at the rewards. So yes, there is risk, we need to address that, but that may be 20 years long thing. In short term, if we can create that critical mass, if we can show that we got the capability, I don't think risk is that big of an issue. Investors look at, investment is a risk anyway. So investors will look at that. Thanks.
But what's more critical is hardware as well. You can put connectivity into an area, but if they don't have laptops or anything to practice on, there will be no penetration of that. So I think as Pakistani government, there should be some incentive for getting hardware, low-level hardware, out to these communities, so therefore people can be online. And one way probably to do this is to partner with industry and give them tax benefits based on how much they reinvest in these programs. Because it's got to be self-sustainable. It's all great to give companies tax breaks and they take this fantastic bank balance, but you really want to reinvest that and grow that ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's, if I could just have a react to that, because what you're articulating there is the primary issue that we have on this digital education thing. It's not providing the content, the curriculum, it's about providing the devices to access the curriculum.
Yes.
So we are looking at how we get low-cost devices out to the market. One thing just to consider, which might be a bit left field, but we're looking at the moment, partly driven by the global chip shortage, is looking at refurbished or used equipment. So for the education sector, so there are companies, and there's one in the UK, which takes used corporate IT equipment, which would otherwise be going into landfill, And this is quite often it's equipment that's 3 or 4 years old, laptops, tablets and so on. So the spec is actually quite high because it's corporate equipment. It's perfectly serviceable, but there's, for example, in PwC in the UK, we get rid of 5,000 laptops a year. So the volumes are quite significant. And there's two things. One is they're low cost, and the second is it's good for the planet because you're reusing perfectly serviceable equipment which would otherwise be going into landfill.
Well, once again, the Pakistan government needs to find a channel to promote this, because I've got a couple of laptops sitting at home that I could use. But if I knew how to do that, I think many people would do this. So it's about communication, it's about incentive, and it's essentially about making sure that people know what to do. I think that's where we could really make a difference. A gentleman said, what's the 3 differences we can make? One is hardware.
Thank you. So, we have a question there.
Respected guests and distinguished members of the panel, I had a question in regards to infrastructure. Do we have a set of national policies associated with data governance, properly defined, that would allow procedures to be visible in regards to, say, data storage, data backup, anonymization, monetization, as well as internal and external data sharing? That's probably my question. If not, then what steps are being taken in order to achieve this? Thank you. My name is Dr. Omar.
Thank you.
I can take it. So it's a very timely question, actually. Just last week, the data policy of the government was released, and in addition to a cloud policy as well. Now they're looking to do a blockchain policy, which obviously has nuances to Bitcoin and that whole crypto action as well. But I think we've realized that tech as an understanding of what that really means has evolved over time, and as more and more disciplines are starting to come into the country, they're realizing that a lot of revenue was leaving the country. So if you needed cloud services through Amazon, you were actually expatriating dollars outside the country rather than having your own cloud ecosystem with data residency laws as well. So, we're happy to share some of those with the audience here, not only from a horizontal what cloud means and data means and privacy protection means, but also for each of the sectors as well. And I know some government ones and healthcare and others are more sensitive, HIPAA and the likes in the US and others like that as well.
Yes. So, the typical example that I had was, for example, could you share could the police share an authentic copy of, say, a digital copy of an FIR to the prosecution and the courts at the moment? Is that currently available?
Yeah. I think they have automated that, so that does exist now. And I think with regards to, say, there is a lot of steps that still need to be covered. Data privacy, GDPR laws for obviously they've been implemented in the EU and other parts of the world fairly recently as well, and Pakistan is catching up too. Like I said, our trajectory can be much faster. But obviously these are very important things, and like Javed said, the government is already on it, and I think in the next, hopefully, very near future, we'll see some good things. And all the information, all the points that have been discussed, please feel free to reach out to the organizers, the presentations, etc. All the wealth of all that we've covered in these panels will be made available, because the intent here is to make use of that, and we can then create more opportunities for everyone.
It's actually a very valid question. And what I'd encourage all of you to do, that as we share these things with you, and you have these specific targeted questions, please send them our way. Because unless we get a collectum of what value these are or not providing, we want to make sure that in the next iteration of those, we address these as well, because innovation evolves, technology evolves. You make a policy today, it's a beta version. It's in constant beta, as we all understand as well. So it's in the works. What Amr Hashmi and others shared today, and all the others have shared here as well. I think the point to take is that there's a realization that there's work to be done. That realization itself came a little late. We're the first ones to admit that. But the good thing is there's so much connectivity that it's not going to take too much to catch up. Global diaspora is involved. I'm part of multiple meetings where people from Silicon Valley, people from multitudes of countries are directly having the same conversation with local people as well, looking at the same documents, giving us instant feedback as well. So all the tools, all the policies are in the making, but we also want to learn from you all as well, what you're seeing as global best practices, what you're seeing as low-hanging fruits. Keep giving it to us and stay involved. The more you're involved, the more we'll do this better, the more these don't just become forums, they become action items for us with deliverables. That's the word we use.
This opportunity, I know there have been a lot of monologues and dialogues today, and there's not going to be any long speech. Thank you so much for taking our time. I'll just take this opportunity to thank for wonderful moderator for the last session. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with working in Pakistan and the challenges and opportunities that you see. Haris, some of the success stories that we wanted to share with you is sitting here live in front of you, making an impact on the lives of so many, not just in those in the urban areas, but in the rural and the peri-urban areas. Thank you, Haris, for taking your time, and especially our star, Ali. Thank you so much for sharing the facts, how Pakistan industry is doing well, and a pure entrepreneur. Why? Because like you mentioned, many of us want to see less of government in how we run function, and more of government in how we're enabled by the enabling ecosystem. So thank you, Ali, for sharing your thoughts. Last and but not the very least, I'll once again thank our wonderful Baroness Noshina ji for taking her time. And you are, of course, the champion of not just Pakistan's IT sector cause and how to enhance trade between both nations, but I think a lot of us can leverage and learn from your experience from the European Parliament and British Parliament, and how to enable an ecosystem which can further enhance the bilateral trade between the two great nations. Last but not the least, Javed Iqbal Saab. I don't know how many you know. He has a background in Salesforce, ex-PwC and EY. So you have many tech people now holding government positions. So that's a very good omen to have, Javed Saab. Thank you so much. Shafiq Saab, again, all your queries regarding investing in Pakistan, right now Minister of Trade and Commerce here hosted in Embassy of Pakistan is actually responsible and is of course very hospitable to enable your transition in exploring further opportunities in Pakistan. And once again, thank you for the whole team at Pakistan High Commission for allowing us to organize this. And I will conclude it on just one note, which is that this is just a beginning. So this is not a conclusion. We are just starting a snowball effect. You'll see a lot of persistent follow-up. There's going to be a detailed post-follow-up report that we are going to prepare, share, invite your feedback, incorporate that feedback, and then organize further elaborative sessions. Thank you. Thank you once again.